Welcome to Liberate Hampton Roads. I'm John. I do advising here in Hampton Roads. One leader that has my trust is someone that I already connected over this morning. Matt knows him. His name is George Robinson. He's a mentor of mine. He was a professor in my master's program. And he was the guy that always stood out. The way I've introduced him this morning, you can tell him I said this too. He won't know, or he won't care. If I can't remember if I've seen the movie or not. I don't think I have. But somebody asked me if I'd seen Bad Santa before and used that as an example to explain their mentor. And I was like, I'm stealing that. So if you've seen the movie Bad Santa, so at this seminary, I had a little different seminary experience than most people would think of when they think of seminary. He took me around the world. He was the Harley riding, rough and tumble, rough around the edges looking kind of guy, but with the biggest heart and one of the most respected people on campus. So that's the guy. He just left that position after a long time. And so he's leaving a big void in that community. And one of the questions we're asking is, how can we calibrate high support and high challenge to fight for the highest possible good in the lives of the people we lead? We'll come back to that. But the question is, what if we had liberating leaders to the point that when they leave the community, they create such a big void that their presence is missed in very tangible ways. And so the question and the vision that we have is, what would it look like if we had liberating leaders like that in every family, team, organization, and community in our hometown? And so the liberating leader is someone who, I just want to focus in on one word, fights. And that fight, you ladies do that for the children. You do that around the world for leaders, Matt. Fighting requires focus. It requires us knowing where to fight, how to fight. It requires some strategy, but most of all, it just requires the drive within ourselves. How do we lead ourselves to keep fighting? Because fighting gets tough and we have to go back into our corner. And the way we fight for this person is completely different than how we need to fight for this person. So how do we as leaders remain healthy so that what we're multiplying is healthy? Healthy things grow, and growing things multiply. And we're either growing and multiplying, or we're fading and withering away. So that constant or consistent, peaceful fight, what does that look like for you as you fight for the highest possible good of those that you lead? Today, what we're going to cover is trust. And the four things we want to do is define what a liberating leader is, someone who fights, identify your tendencies to building trust. So how do you typically build influence and trust with people from the second you first meet them to how do you maintain that trust? How do you build on that initial trust? What's the saying? Respect and trust, they're different, right? You have to earn my trust, but because you're a human, I respect you immediately, but I don't have to trust you immediately. That was a helpful one for me to learn early on, as I trusted way too quickly at times. Define what's getting in the way of building trust. What's undermining your influence, or what is undermining your people's influence that you're leading? And then ultimately, we're going to commit to be a liberator. So this is the support challenge matrix. Driving in this morning, it was in my head. I was thinking about it, driving on the road, and just thought, man, this is really like the reap what you sow matrix. Because what you put in is what you get out. And we highlight two different types of employees or peers or workers, colleagues. Those who are compliant and get the job done, or those who are engaged and get the job done really well. So compliant employees, like, you can get movement out of compliant or engaged. It's just, how are we getting that movement? The compliance is from lighting a fire under them. You can light a fire under someone's ass and they'll move. But to get an engaged employee, you can light a fire in their heart. and they'll move themselves. So how can we help lead our people to lead themselves, to help them identify what's undermining their influence? So it goes beyond just what's undermining my influence to how can I be that liberating leader that's trying to figure out how this person can do the same thing for themselves. The support challenge matrix helps us do all of that. So really simply, support, challenge, high, low for both of those. In one quadrant, we have the low challenge, low support. And the reality is, none of us are truly or naturally this out of the womb or all the time, even. And so sometimes I think the worst one, it's the colors matter too. It's kind of gray. It's just abdicating responsibility. It's abdicating authority. It's abdicating your role, your seat, your throne as a leader. And it's just showing up, having a culture of apathy and low expectation. People don't really care. No one's really being compliant except to cover themselves, and there's not much of a culture of unity or that we can get anything done together. We're just trying to get by through the next day. The next one is protect, and that's where we can provide high support, but we struggle at bringing the challenge. We want to bring the challenge. We know the moments when we should bring the challenge, but when it comes down to it after the 12th time, finally we're going to bring some challenge, and all of a sudden we seem like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and we've created some initial entitlement, but now that we've held their feet to the fire, finally it's mistrust, because why didn't you tell me that the first 11 times that this happened? The third rough one is domination, and that creates a culture of fear and manipulation where it's only challenge, very little support, but what we want to be is liberators. And that creates empowerment and opportunity and engaged employees. So two things I want to point out real quick, and then I'll kick it to you guys. One is we vacillate between multiples of these, depending on who we're talking to, or where we're at, or what's going on in our life or their life, and when we're trying to figure out what in the heck is going on right now. And so being able to have language for this really helped me understand how I show up for my people, whether it's my wife or my friends or my colleagues or my clients. What are they actually experiencing? A long time ago, I used to think as a coach, as a mentor, that I was a really good encourager and challenger, but what I came to realize was that when I got frustrated and on tilt, I didn't know how to encourage or motivate at all. I just knew how to get angry. I didn't have the tools to actually sit there and be able to figure out, this is what this person needs right now. This is what could unlock them to get to the next level. Depending on our makeup or our personality or our voice, as we say, we all have a natural default into which one of these categories we fall into when we're being accidental. It requires super heightened intention, but the opposite of intention is accidental. So if I'm being accidental, I know my default with this specific person is typically this. It doesn't match one of those. I could have a negative list of tendencies for all the other categories, right? And now based off of those tendencies, I'm starting to become more aware of how I show up for people when I'm not being intentional but accidental, when I'm tired, and so on. Yep, great. So liberating leaders. The best leaders in the world calibrate high support, high challenge to fight for the highest possible good in the lives of those they lead. So this question, as we transition, and I'm going to pass it off to Eddie, is who's one person that you are liberating? Who's somebody that you are fighting for?
I was at a meeting last Friday, and the guy just kept putting up his hand, and everybody would put their hand up, and it was a cool power move, but it's okay. You don't have to do it. It did not work in the first meeting. I don't plan for it to work today. For some of you who were here a quarter ago, 3 months ago, you guys saw this tool. Now, something that I say often is, we all know what a hammer is, but man, there's a guy who comes over to my house, his name's Alexi, and I watch him put fence up, and it's board, hammer, in one go, board, hammer, nail, board, hammer, nail, board, hammer, nail. And he has a mastery of the tool. He uses it every day. I know some of you can use a hammer really well in here, okay? But, right, with this tool specifically, it's like a hammer. It requires daily use in order for us to master the tool. That's why we base everything that we do quarterly based on this tool. Then we jump into another tool to get deeper on this tool specifically. So liberation, right, is liberating leaders are people who fight for the highest good of their people. Individuals, right, they calibrate, support, and challenge for each one. Something that tends to happen in my life is I tend to liberate my 12-year-old son. He just, gets the best of me sometimes. Accidentally, he gets the best of me, right, without me thinking about it. My 9-year-old daughter, Isabella, tends to get protected. She just has a sweeter personality than the other 4, okay, or the other 3, right? And then Eliana tends to get dominated because she tends to have a harder or more difficult personality to engage with, right? Her responses are harsher. Right? And so I mirror them. If I'm accidental, I mirror them. And then our foster kid tends to get abdication if I'm being accidental, right? I'm like, Nicole's taking care of it. I don't need to take care of it, right? And yet, all of them, I need to make the game plan individually as a person of going, how can I liberate Jonathan intentionally, not accidentally? How can I dominate how can I liberate the one that I'm dominating, Eliana? How can I liberate Isabella, which I'm here and moving her here, and our foster placement right now? How can I actually bring some liberation, high support, and high challenge? This past weekend, that little girl was like, I really want to go to this birthday party, and we hate the location of that birthday party. Okay, and I was adamant. I'm going to take her. And Nicole's like, what is going on with you? You're making this happen, And I'm like, I know. I was like, because we tend to move heaven and earth to make things happen for our kids. I really want to make this happen for the booch, is what we call her, right? And so we want to make this happen for her, right? And so it was a moment for me I was trying to be a liberator, and Nicole was going, what is going on right now, right? And it was just that extra effort and intentionality. I love what Matt said. There are these circles of influence that we have. Do you high support and high challenge yourself? Right? And that high support and high challenge of yourself creates trust. I actually had this moment where I was like, you're learning to trust yourself because you're bringing support and challenge to yourself. And so you learn to have trust. Stephanie trusts Stephanie, right? When we dominate ourselves, we learn to not trust ourselves. We learn that we can't be trusted with how much we push, right? And I'll finish with this because it's something that has happened for us recently as we begin to master the tool. The culture that you create for yourself, and this is where I'll stop. The culture that you create for yourself happens between Friday night and Monday morning. What I mean by that is if you go super hard on Friday night, party hard Friday, party hard Saturday, and then Sunday you're trying to recover, and Monday you hit the gym real hard, you've learned to dominate yourself, you know what I mean? In how you support and challenge yourself, right? The way that you treat yourself on the weekend is a good sample of how you support and challenge yourself, right? And that carries over into the week. All right. So as we are talking about this and who's one person you're liberating, I'd love to hear from you. Who is one person? Now that we know that the support challenge matrix is about individuals, it's not just this general thing. I'm not just a liberator. Because Brian might be like, no, you're not. You're a protector to me. You know what I mean? Right? So I just bring support. You know what I mean? Lots of support, right? No, so the question is, can you? I'd love to hear from you guys. What's that one person? What does it look like? Where are you liberating? So now that we have liberation as the foundation, right? Liberating leaders build trust. You must build trust in order to have influence. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to look under the hood of trust and go, what are the mechanics of how trust is built, right? Trust is built through having these 4 areas. Let's say this is I'm going to say this is me, just so that it's easier for me to keep track of it. as we have these 4 areas of trust, right? Character, chemistry, competence, and credibility. I'll define these here in a second, but essentially what we need is we need to be able to, as I show up, I need to be able to demonstrate character, competency, credibility, and chemistry. And we can even rate them just to be able to track. I can rate them as red, which means it's not happening, I'm not modeling it. Yellow, I'm sort of doing it. Or green, which is I'm being very intentional about modeling one of these C's for you, right? These are the definition of each one of those. Character, and this is just a very, very specific definitions as we begin to build trust. Character, do I trust you? Are you a person of integrity? Are you for me or for yourself? Right now we're building on liberation or domination, liberation or protection, right? Are you for me, right? Is there liberation here, right? Character, right? Are you a person of integrity? All right, now chemistry. Do I like you? Right? Do I connect with you and enjoy spending time with you? Right? You start to realize that, man, maybe we have established character with each other, but maybe we don't have a lot of chemistry. Maybe it's a little awkward. Right? Competency. Are you competent? Are you good at what you do? Do you know what you're talking about? Are you confident in the way you communicate your competence? Do you have a proven track record? With competence, the question is, are you good at what you do? And can you help me win? There's going to be kind of like some skin in the game as we go about this process. And then last one is credibility. Is it relevant to me? Are you able to take your competence and understand the complexities of my reality and design a bespoke solution that helps me achieve my goals? Credibility is, do you understand what I'm going through? My season of life, my family situation, my job. I was in a big room on Friday with entrepreneurs, and the guy up front was a high chemistry guy. The hair was flowing, he had his suit on. It still says that he needed some more product in the hair, but he was really like, I mean, Michael was on. He was really, and I was like, I trust him. I mean, he's in a very important space in front of a bunch of important people. It's fine. But there was this moment at the end of the time where Michael is at the front, and he says, do you guys have any questions? Can I troubleshoot anything for you? And there's a guy in the back of the room, and everybody is from a different industry. Leadership development, insurance, HVAC, I mean, the whole gamut. And the guy in the back of the room is in insurance. And the guy's like, well, I have these admin, and they do this, and these admin do this, and I have this team. And he asked the most, just knowing questions about the admin, about the documents, about the boilerplate language, and the guy, for 5 minutes, we just saw bullets go across, ping, 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 ping. And at the end of 5 minutes, he's like, thank you. And he sat down. And we all, like, almost simultaneously just looked at Michael like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, that was credibility. He understood that insurance guy's situation so well that for me, I was in that moment, I was like, okay, so I have chemistry with Michael, but now I really believe in his competence and his credibility. Wow, you know? And so we have different ways of modeling this for the people in our life, right? I actually sat down to have a beer with Brian, and he did something very similar in credibility, right? He had about 12 questions that felt like I was being seen very clearly of where I'm at, my situation, my life, right? So I appreciate that, Brian. So we have those 4 C's as we go into it. That's part of the motor, right? And before I go into that, actually, how many of you, I didn't do this in the first group, but I really want to do this with you. How many of you characters like top? You're like, this is the most important one for me. I need you to model character for me if I'm going to trust you. Yes, yes. Okay. How about chemistry? We're like, we got a vibe. Okay, okay. How about competence? I need you to be good at what you do. Like, I need, we're going to run together. How about credibility? I need you to understand my situation. Yes. Lily's like, I want all of them from everyone. All right, so we have those 4 C's, and then we have this other dynamic, right? So let's say I show up, and I am intentionally trying to do all 4 of those for the people in my life. There's one more barrier to trust. Even if you build trust effectively, sometimes self-preservation can get in the way. Your fear, right? We all have different types of fears, different types of self-preservations, and as we begin to break down that looking underneath the hood, we have a self-preservation that will get in the way of us as we establish trust. It'll get in the way of relationship, influence, and impact. And these three questions have single-handedly, they changed my life. As I enter, and I've had the privilege to enter into different rooms with different people from different backgrounds, these three questions help me show up humble, confident, and secure. But it required actually looking really closely at these questions. And the questions are, what am I afraid of losing? Right? That's the self-preservation. What am I afraid of losing? Whether we're afraid of losing face, or position, or power, or time, influence, money. What am I trying to hide? Some people hide that they might not have the education or the background. They might not be from a certain location. There's all kinds of things. We came across a leader, he was a CFO, and he was just so harsh. And we later found out that he didn't have his master's, his MBA from Stanford, like the rest of the group in the space, right? They were kind of like high caliber people. And he's like, I don't even have an MBA. But he was so hardened, and he dominated the people around him because he felt like he had to hide that he didn't have that backing, right? And then the last one is, what am I trying to prove? And to whom? This is within this tool, the one question that got me. So if 2 tends to be in isolation, 3 tends to be very relational. Let me explain 3. 3 is what I call the panel. So for me, in 2017, I was sitting down with a friend of mine, and he goes, hey, Eddie, you have a lot to prove to these people that aren't even in your life anymore. Apparently, I had a panel in my head, my dad who had passed away already, my first guy that ever mentored me, and then 2 guys from high school, right? So every time that I showed up to the gym at the YMCA at 5 a.m., I was proving something to 16-year-old Colby Utt. You know what I mean? There was this panel of people that I lived by, and I acted, and my leadership behaviors were impacted by these 4 people all the time. And Chris, he looks at me from across the fire, and he goes, why don't you fire them? And I was like, wait, what? He's like, wait, why don't you drop the self-preservation of something to prove and to whom, right? Whereas, just to answer your question, Matt, what am I trying to hide is the isolation game of what's happening inside of me internally, between me and myself. What am I trying to prove and to whom tends to be very relational, and just what I perceive our dynamic to be, and me continuing to live out of certain behaviors because those people were in my life. You have to know yourself to lead yourself, right? So I can't give away anything that I don't have. And so as I went through this tool, that's why I relate it to me mostly as I'm going through it, because I have to relate it to myself first, discover this for myself, and then as I work with other leaders or I step into different rooms, when people show up a certain way, it's the first questions that I begin to ask myself about that person. I'm like, ooh, this is what would happen. Me and you would have a really strange interaction. And in the past, I'd be like, oh, something's wrong with me. I would shrink, I'd have shame or guilt. And now, what's your name? Charlie, right? And so, but now as I meet you, Charlie, and we go back and forth and something weird happens, I'm like, the first thing that I'll say is, was it me? Did I have a self-preservation, or did I show up without modeling some kind of character, competence, credibility, or chemistry? And if I do that inventory, then I'll go to you and I'll go, well, maybe he had something to prove, something to lose, or something to hide. But I've done the hard work of doing the tool for myself first, right? So that's why we asked this question. Which self-preservation sneaks up on you the most? We were having this conversation in the hallway with our 3 kids, the 12, 9, and 9-year-old, and we were having this conversation where one of them was like, we were talking about the golden rule and the platinum rule. The golden rule being you treat people the way that you want to be treated. And because we were talking, we got into a discussion about them calling each other monkey and monkey butt and something else that was really dumb. You know what I mean? And I was like, why? And Jonah, my 12-year-old, was like, I don't mind it if they call me that. It's cool. You know what I mean? Like I just call them that. And I was like, I know, but why does the golden rule break down? And my 9-year-old goes, because I actually need to treat you the way you want to be treated, not the way that I want to be treated, right? And so there's this hunkering down or specialization that's happening in the work that we do now, where influence in 2025 is about learning what you need and leading you, calibrating support and challenge to you, specifically to who you are. right? So we're taking the best of the individualistic movement and we're actually using it for good, right? So let me run you through a couple of scenarios. Then I'm gonna ask you one last question, and we'll have John come up, and we'll go into something very practical, so you can lock something in for this quarter. Okay? Self-preservation holds you back from true influence. The era of command was, as we had an industrial revolution, as we have a World War II. You have industrial revolution. Everybody's going out to the factories. World War II, all the women are also going out to the factories, and you could actually operate out of command. You could actually say, I'm your supervisor, do what I say, and people did what you said. As we go into 2025, as we're in the middle of it, right, and as we're in the modern era, it's an era of influence. People are like, I'm your supervisor, and people are like, I don't care. You know what I mean? And then they do whatever they want, right? Because up to this point, the command or the domination in some ways, it really worked. It was just the way you did things, right? And so now the tools that we're bringing is to say, hey, what does it look like to live out or your leadership as influence? Meaning you don't have to be on site for people to do the things that you want them to do. You can actually be across the world, across town, and people are actually putting into practice and into play some of the things that you want them to do. You know, that's influence, right? And we get the most influence through support and challenge and by establishing trust. Right? So these are this is all of it coming together, the self-preservation questions, the 4 C's, and on the other side of that is relationship, influence, and impact. Right? The influence model helps us understand different relational dynamics. So the first dynamic is, what if I show up and I'm like, I have no self-preservation. I have nothing to prove, nothing to lose, and nothing to hide, but I don't do the work of establishing character, chemistry, competence, and credibility. Right? So I'm like, hey guys, we're great, we're friends, I have nothing to prove. And then you're like, whoa, this self-preservation is like, I haven't seen character or competence or credibility or chemistry from you, but you can have all my relationship and all my influence and all my impact. Feelers tend to do this, right? You're like, I just love you. People are like, I respect you as a person. You know what I mean? And like, you're there, I'm here, you know? And so this happens when we show up guns blazing, really excited, really open, right? And then we're offering that, but that doesn't mean that we have relationship, influence, and impact. It's just how we show up accidentally, right? Without modeling these. Then you have somebody who is very competent. They're very credible, right? We already have those definitions locked in, but they have self-preservation. There's something to prove, something to lose, something to hide sometimes. And so we can transact. It's green, right? We can transact, go back and forth, but we're not entering into influence and impact or relationship. We're just transacting. I pay you to do a very competent, incredible job, right? And you do that competent, credible job for me. Contractors, doctors, lawyers sometimes end up in this transaction without having this relationship, influence, and impact opportunity. But this could be anywhere. That's not just those areas or those circles of influence, right? We're essentially saying, hey, work, this is what happens. Work is work. Work is for competence and credibility. Work is not for character and chemistry, right? I'm here to do a job, do the job, right? This happens a lot on the floor, right? On the shop floor. We hear this all the time. People will actually from the back of the room go like, oh, this is me. What's wrong with this, right? Well, what's wrong with it is this person can end up dominating, right? And so what you have is compliance. Something that John said earlier today was you can either light a fire underneath them, right? Or you can light a fire inside of their heart. And people actually, by influence, that's influence versus lighting a fire underneath. And we end up with, a lot of opportunity left on the table because we did not establish relationship, influence, and impact through character and chemistry. The last one is I don't show up with character, chemistry, competence, or credibility, and I'm also self-preserved. There's no transaction. You're you, I'm me, I know you. You might have people in the community that you know like this, and you're like, we know we exist, but there's no partnership, there's no collaboration, there's no liberation, there's no influence or impact, right? So my question, and here's the last one. The goal would be that we are intentional about an individual person in our life. That we want to begin to establish character, chemistry, competence, and credibility we ourselves ask the question, do I have some kind of self-preservation, right? We work through that. And by doing that, it actually allows people to also lower their self-preservation.
All right. Good conversation, it seemed like. We're going to move into, as we wrap up our time here, action steps. We like to have every gathering that we do leave with something tangible that we can work on, which it could be the next quarter, which would be the next time that we meet. But take one thing that we're going to focus on, and how we walk through that one thing is with our core process. We call it, we own it, respond, and execute. And on the flip side of your papers, you'll have an opportunity to be intentional and write those out. So we'll spend a few moments walking through that. So the questions that we like to ask, we're going to start with call it. So as we've been talking about trust all day, we've seen these different models, whether it be the support challenge matrix, whether it be the self-preservation influence models, as we speak about relational dynamics. What's one thing, if you think about one person that you thought about through this whole time that you are looking to build trust with, have a better relationship of trust with, whether it be a client, an employee, a boss, a family member, a friend. It could be anyone that is meaningful and impactful to you that you see value in building that trust with. Think about that one person and let's call it, what does it look like? What is the one thing that you want to work on with that person? Let's go ahead and spend a moment to write that down before we move on to the next ones. We'll kind of do a little group discussion afterwards, after we go through all these four. But the next one would be own it. And so this is probably the most important. It's your why, your battle cry as to why this even matters, why you would walk away today and not throw the paper away. What happens if you don't actually rise to this calling? We've done the work to point it out, make it plain. But what is the sense of urgency as to why it matters to build trust with this person or group of people? What happens if you don't? Yeah. What happens if I don't kill this fly? And that's going to allow you to walk through this process that is hard. We've already talked about the challenge that it inherently brings to do the fighting with the people or the group of individuals. Could it cost you a whole relationship? Could it cost you money? Could it cost you a way of living? What is the cost? Could it cost you time? Can't get back? And the next one will be respond. So, which is typically the easiest is what we run to, and really it's reacting, typically because we're being accidental a lot of the times. But as we're proactively being intentional about the things that we just listed, well, how are we going to respond? This is our SMART goals. And it's helpful to be specific, otherwise we don't really have something we're going to attain to. It's just going to kind of be floating around in our brains and never happening. And the last one would be execute. This is the follow through. So all the things that we just went through, who are you going to be accountable with? This is not a micromanaging, all right, hey, I'm giving my accountability partner my goal, and now I'm going to command that person to keep accountable of me and check in on me. This is a partnership and collaboration. You're inviting someone in the process of building trust into that space to say, hey, I'm working on this thing. It could be the person that you're working on it with. Probably also good to have someone outside of that relationship that you're building trust. You could have a non-emotional, non-biased, feedback situation to say, hey, we're actually working towards this thing. How are you going to know that you're progressing in that? And once you're done with that, go ahead and turn to your neighbor and just discuss that plan. This will be kind of your action plan for the next quarter, something tangible to work on. So yeah, discuss that for a second with your neighbor, and we'll come back. Next steps, we would love to have the opportunity to hang out for about an hour or so. If you guys are all part of different businesses, organizations, spheres of influence, where I think we've seen the value of being able to implement tools like these, have these real conversations that are real tangible, that have real action steps associated with them, and that there's elevation that is inherent from being able to be in spaces like this and have people that are, have tool sets and things like this to come and just do a people strategy audit is what we call it. Just take a census, I guess, of the status of where your people are at, how the command climate is what I'm sure military terms, but I'm sure it's also used in different businesses too. But what is the state and what is the return on investment, that may not be made plain yet, but we can help in the process of doing that. We have our connection cards or QR codes on the bottom of those sheets. So feel free to contact myself, Eddie, Nikki, John here in the room, Emily also, she's not here today, but she's also on our team. And we would love to just partner with you and do exactly this, liberate leaders at all levels. So whether it's from the shop floor to the CEO, like that's what we do, it's our passion. So we would love to do that, come alongside and help you all grow.